I'm Sonia Azad. Welcome to The Shift, a place to inspire growth, resilience, and wisdom, real connection, healthy conversation as we navigate life's changes and challenges together. Because, as I like to say, we are all each other's teachers. Thanks to our friends at the Vineyard at Florence for making this podcast possible. Hair and makeup generously provided by Glam House Collective.
Hi, I'm Sonia Azad. Welcome to The Shift. We are at Dallas Irby today, and I am joined by Bijou Finney, who is a psychedelic facilitator. It's really nice to be with you. Thank you so much for joining me. You're actually in Virginia.
Yeah, it's nice to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I've wanted to talk about, plant medicine. I get a lot of questions about microdosing, and it's something that I really have not been able to have an open conversation about until now. So this is very exciting. And I think it's coming at a time when a lot of people are very curious about this as a healing modality and as they shift in and out of different stages of life, different disease processes. So I want to start by just asking you, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
Yeah.
It's awesome to talk about this. It's something I'm deeply passionate about.
And how did you get into the work that you do?
I was originally a business coach, and I found that a lot of my clients were having these incredible mental blocks and these narratives that were just not serving them any longer. They were plateauing, and I really couldn't get deep in there with them with just talking and just coaching. And I personally was on my own journey to understand how to optimize my body, my mind, my soul. And I was going through a process of trying a ton of healing modalities, a ton of biohacking modalities. And that's when I personally got into microdosing. When I went through my own experience with it, I was like, oh, wow, this is the missing link that I need to utilize with my clients. And so I went and got a psychedelic facilitator training after a while, and now I utilize it mostly for entrepreneurs to get past mental blocks, but it's not just in their business, it's also in their lives, their love life, their relationships, and everything in between.
So when you define microdosing for people, what does that mean?
So microdosing is typically pretty sub-perceptive. I like people really dialing in the right dose for them. So many things will feed into whether or not you're a 0.1 or a 0.3, your height, your weight, what other pharmaceuticals you might be on, the past trauma you've experienced, like what your environment looks like now. All of that has to be taken into account, but it should be very sub-perceptive so that you can still be a mom, you can still go to work, you can still drive, you can still be yourself. I've seen that a mix of very sub-perceptive, but also every now and again a light tea experience, or every now and again going a little bit deeper with the medicine is where the magic happens. And so it's kind of like everyone's path is so different and needs to be customized, and integration is so important. So yeah, microdosing can look different from person to person, but it is really accessible because it's such small doses that it really just feels like a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or a supplement that you would take and feel slightly.
So two big questions come to mind that are probably more basic. First off, is this legal / how is this legal? I mean, you might have people go, I'm interested, but I don't want to do anything illegal.
So it is legal or decriminalized actually in some parts of the United States and some parts of the world. So a lot of my clients are in places where this is legal. It's not legal on a federal level yet, but with the studies going on at Johns Hopkins, I do believe that it's probably going to go up in legislation federally way faster than we think it will, especially all of the trials that MAPS have done on MDMA and psilocybin. But yes, you're right. In the majority of the United States right now, it is not legal.
And The second question is about fear. So obviously there are some hurdles for some people to get through before they, might actually experiment with microdosing. But how do you break that barrier of fear? If someone's like, I don't know, I'm just a little scared to try it, because that, I think, taints the experience.
Totally. I think that's why everyone wants to have someone hold their hand, right? So a lot of people will come to me and they've had really traumatizing experiences back in the day when they were dabbling in it recreationally, and maybe they took too much at a concert and freaked out a little bit, or they've heard horror stories from other people, in which case they do have that apprehension to get started. But that's why it's very imperative that you start at the lowest possible dose and dial yourself up slowly until you barely feel it, and you don't push yourself too hard. It's very like Western mentality to just be like, oh, she takes a 0.3, I'm just gonna start a 0.3. And that's when things can get a little iffy. And that's why working with someone is important, because I talk to a lot of people that get this stuff online and it's just a 0.1 and it's mixed with other medicinal mushrooms and they don't really feel it. So then they don't understand the value in it, or someone gave them too much and it was like, oh, I didn't like the way that felt, so it's not for me. When in all actuality, it should have been properly dialed in based on the specific type of person that they are.
So talk to me about your training, because I feel like the facilitation of this, which you're talking about right now, is kind of, incredibly important in how someone receives the medicine.
Yeah, so I'm one of those people that kind of goes hard in the paint, as they say, and I went down every rabbit hole I could in the beginning. And when I started this 7 years ago, there wasn't very much online. There was a few articles about how Silicon Valley guys were using it to optimize and innovate their businesses and minds. And other than that, there was really just a bunch of like hippie dudes online talking about their trips. And so it was very hard for me to understand and how to navigate. So it was many years of personal experimentation before actually taking many trainings across the board. Most of them are all online on my website, explaining the various capacities of them. There's definitely the more scientific harm reduction trainings that I've done that are more about like the scientific side of things. And then I've also been trained with a shaman for the spiritual side of things. And I've also done sex, love, and relationship training, because that comes up in psychedelic work. And if there's people out there that have only done like $100 double blind course and they're calling themselves a microdose coach, I would be wary of them, because it's not just understanding the basics of what a microdose is, it's how to fully support someone through integration.
And how long are these processes? I mean, so obviously you're probably not working with someone one time and then you're like, good luck, have a nice day. I mean, this is kind of a longer term process, right?
Yeah, and so what you'll find in the Wild West right now with most, I guess you would call them microdosing consultants or coaches, is that they definitely help someone dial in, and then they kind of just are available to them to check in or adjust their protocol or their strain or their dose over time. I take it a little bit further. So I definitely take almost a month, a couple of weeks to dial someone in, get it really adjusted and integrated into their life rather than the other way around. And then that's when really month 2 stuff starts coming up out of the psyche. That's when stuff starts coming up that needs to be addressed. And that's when we would do microdose assisted sessions virtually, where they would have a low dose of the medicine in their system when we talk. So it's a really it should be a comprehensive technique to have the somatic experience of it. So bringing in body movement to release the trauma from your fascia, but then also the talk aspect of it to be able to heal wounds or to replace narratives that are no longer serving you while your mind is open. but then also like the medicine component of it and the mindfulness component of it. So that's typically what happens in month 2. And then month 3, we really understand, should we continue on with this? Are we just scratching the surface? Is it appropriate to do a tea experience? Is it appropriate to do a big in-person experience? Everyone is different. And so, yeah, it typically takes 3 to 6 months to really understand what needs to be addressed, help that, and then make sure that it sticks, like really integrate it into your life, and to where it's not just chasing peak experiences, you're really changing your life over the long haul.
And this is something that you stay with the person, the client, through the entire process, what you're talking about, what you're describing.
Yeah, it's very different than talk therapy. So we definitely have our sessions where we have an hour-long session where we talk, but they have constant access to me over chat. And I feel like that's necessary when someone's navigating their mind and their body and their psyches and a new medicine. I don't love the approach where it's kind of like Western medicine of here's your Prozac, like good luck. It needs to be like, how can I help you each day? Like what's coming up in your mind? And so, yeah, it's a encompassing experience, I would say.
So where are we in terms of the science behind the opening? You called it the opening of the mind. I like that because that's what I visualize with this. What is science telling us, showing us, teaching us about this right now?
Well, I think it's kind of going parallel with the research on neuroplasticity. Before, we thought you couldn't teach an old dog new tricks, but now we're understanding that the mind is very malleable and that you are able to, if you're now in a safe environment, you can address the trauma that's still stuck in your mind, like the coping mechanisms or the survival tactics that you've had that are really hurting you now, that also kept you safe when you were younger. They need to be addressed, right? And so talking about them all of the time and just talk therapy actually kind of deepens that neural pathway. So it's like you're going deeper into the trauma sometimes, and you're not actually releasing it from your body. So what they're finding is across the board, it's supporting people with addictions, it's supporting people with depression, it's supporting with people with end-of-life anxiety, it's helping people with PTSD. And people kind of tell me, how is it that it addresses so many things? And I would say that it does get to the taproot, like the very lowest point of the human, which is safety. And it's understanding what needs to change in the environment to make someone feel safe, or what needs to change in the mind to make someone feel safe and to make someone feel empowered to take care of themselves. And typically from that taproot, all of these other issues like autoimmune, chronic pain, depression, anxiety, all of those stem from it. And so it kind of like can clear up all of them once that bottom thing is addressed.
It's really interesting that, because earlier I mentioned fear being a barrier, and fear is a root chakra or a fundamental, a foundational kind of blockage or barrier to entry for most people. And so, yeah, I mean, by nature, that's what we're addressing right off the bat.
Exactly.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is that this is allowing people to imagine new possibilities.
Exactly. Yeah, it's there's different terminology depending on what circles you're in, but it's kind of like knocking someone onto a new timeline, or taking their focus and bringing them back a little bit to be able to perceive themselves and notice what they're doing in their lives, because we're kind of unconsciously on autopilot a lot of the times. And once we can actually sense and perceive ourselves, then we can start making changes.
Yeah, I love that. What about, for some people who go, well, why can't you just do that with meditation or with, something that doesn't require plant medicine or this, elevated, let's call it, experience?
You absolutely can do it with those things, and people do all of the time. And I love those things. They're very needed. The problem with it that I experienced was the devotion and the time needed to do it enough to cause change is a long time, and people don't really want to wait that long sometimes. So I guess the biggest thing, the thing that makes this different than a lot of the other healing modalities, is that it is intense in the way that it light speeds your progress. It makes things go faster, because a lot of times your body and mind is so good at burying all of the trauma that it's so hard to, by yourself with meditation or breath work, liberate that. Whereas this is a very strong catalyst to kind of uncap that and then understand what to do about that. But you should be using other healing modalities with this medicine to kind of support yourself through it, to soften your nervous system and to make yourself feel stronger and able to tolerate the stresses of the world.
You know, Bijou, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I get people who ask me all the time, Sonia, what do you think about microdosing? And I want to start. I think I want to start, but where should I start? And so what is like step number one that you would recommend to people who are already curious about it enough to openly ask someone about it?
Yeah, so I really think that the people that I've noticed that I work with that really get the most out of it are kind of either they've primed themselves with a lot of other work. So maybe they've done a lot of talk therapy, they've done a lot of other healing modalities, they've had a lot come to the surface, and now they're unaware of how to release it. So those people do really, really well. The other types of people that do well are the ones that are at rock bottom. They're like, I like feel like giving up. I am like so low that I just can only go up from here. The people that are kind of in both of those camps tend to do really well because they devote themselves to this and they have the space in their life. So for instance, when some people ask me if it's right for them, I definitely have to ask quite a few questions, like, what do you have going on in your life? Are you starting a new job, a new huge project? Are you about to move? Are you going through a breakup? Did you just have a death in the family? All of those things need space, and opening up the can of worms isn't typically appropriate for everyone. So really understanding where you are in life and why you want to work with the medicine is the first question that someone should be asking themselves. And then obviously the next one would be, is it appropriate for my environment? Is my partner okay with it? Like, do I have enough space with my kids to do this? And so those kind of questions is like, is this the right time? And can I devote some of my brain power to this experiment?
Is there anyone who's ever come to you and you go, you know what, I don't think this is not right for you, or the timing may not be right, or this experience might not be what you need? Is there anyone, I guess I'm asking, who would not benefit from this, or like this is not the right thing for them?
So if someone is on an extraordinary amount of SSRIs or like anti-depression or anxiety medication, it is a long dial-in process, because at the same time you have to taper off while you're using the medicine. So it's a more involved process, so someone needs to understand that. If someone has like bipolar or schizophrenia in their diagnosis or in their family, it's probably best that you work with like maybe John Hopkins or something like that, where you're really, really supported and you have constant interaction with someone, versus Joe Schmo that says that they're a microdosing consultant or by yourself. So I would say people that just had a death in the family are currently in a very toxic relationship. You're softening your nervous system in not the right place and time, right? So yeah, there's definitely times that people have come to me and I've said, maybe you should try ketamine infusion, or maybe you should do this instead, or maybe you need more time before you're ready to start this. But everyone is completely different, and it does take someone asking you a lot of questions about your past, the trauma you've experienced in the past, what your current environment looks like, and then what your future goals are. And if they're not asking you those questions, I would be weary.
Why do you think so many people are curious about microdosing specifically now?
I would say that the things that I've noticed are the fact of how safe it is. I mean, it's really one of the safest substances in the world. Also, the side effects that people are experiencing with other pharmaceuticals, for them to not even really work that well for them, people are sick of it. It's not working, and they just feel lost and sad. And so they're just jumping from SSRI to SSRI. Therapy doesn't seem to be getting them where they want to go. And so I would say that the mix of this being super safe, this being really powerful and proven in all of these scientific studies, and the fact that they're kind of just fed up with what's currently been on the spectrum for them is kind of like a perfect storm. And when I started this 5 years ago, I thought this will be 5-10 years before or more before people are even on board with this. And it really only took kind of like the Netflix series that like all of a sudden my bookings blew up, and I was just shocked by it. But I think it is. I think it's people are like, oh, wow. I mean, all the studies are pointing to this doing really well. And technically, this is very safe and offers very few side effects compared to what I'm currently working with. So why not give it a try?
Yeah, my question was actually, I was considering asking, do you think that the Netflix series popularized this a bit? And so, yeah, it confirms what you said, confirms that people took that and said, hey, I'm needing relief enough to try something that I'm just now hearing about, and it seems like it might work. So why don't I give it a shot?
Yeah, and a ton of celebrities really started feeling safe enough to open about it too. And I think it's helping with the stigma, because this isn't addictive. This does not cause you to be dependent on it. This isn't hurting anyone. People aren't dying over it. It's not in the same camp as like meth and heroin and coke and all of those hard drugs. This is a plant medicine, and I think people are starting to understand that.
Yeah, understand. And I think what we started talking about, what you mentioned at the beginning, was proper dosage, and how that really plays a huge role, a critical role in this process, because taking too much then, takes away the function of what you're trying to do day to day. And that's not the goal of this.
Yeah, I mean, I use the analogy, like you can have 4 bottles of wine or you can have 1 glass of wine. And typically people can function and have just a nice, like, calming effect with 1 glass of wine. It's kind of the same with mushrooms. Like, you need to be in a completely safe environment. If you're going to be doing a large dose of mushrooms, you're going to need to know why. You're going to need to be with a facilitator. But a microdose, you can really have your nervous system calmed and your neuroplasticity really firing off in a very low dose. Like, I believe in short order, as soon as it becomes like federally accepted, that it is going to be kind of like an additive that people just pop into their smoothies. Like, I think we might see this in Jamba Juice one day. It's like, add a little psilocybin to my smoothie. Like, I believe it's going to be that common.
And just to clear this up, because I didn't ask you already, there's people who are doing like this mushroom coffees and what's the difference between the mushrooms you're talking about and the mushrooms that people might be thinking of that they walk past in a forest on a hike or something?
Medicinal mushrooms are incredible. I mean, they are helping people with so many things, and mixing medicinal mushrooms and psychedelic mushrooms is amazing. So like, if you were to do a stack with psilocybin mushrooms and lion's mane mushroom, your brain is really going to get a lot of added benefit from it. So yeah, I think mushrooms are having their heyday right now, because across the board, they are helping people regenerate cellular activity, and help with gut issues, and help with their brain function, and help with like stress. And so, yeah, I mean, mushrooms, I'm like one of their biggest fans, and love working with all of them.
How do you know that you're getting a good kind?
So when you say good kinds, like the company processes the mushrooms in an integral way?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are things that are just trendy, right? Like, oh, we see that people are making money off of mushrooms, so I'm going to jump on. And there's a lot of substrate in my capsules. So what that means is the things that mushrooms will grow on, they just like put it all into the capsules, and you don't want that, right? It's growing on grain. And so it's knowing and asking questions and looking at people's websites and seeing like how much is substrate versus mushroom, and what is the way that they process it. So actually breaking the cell wall is important for you to be able to digest it and have it bioavailable. So some of my favorite ways to do it are tincture, or some of the good brands out there. So like I like Life Cycle, I like Dose, I like Mud Water. There's a lot of really great companies out there that do a good job of actually getting the power of the mushroom into the way that you're consuming it.
Yeah. Well, this has all been such great information. I really appreciate your time today. I think I learned a lot, and this kind of opens the door for even more questions and hopefully more conversations. So I would love to have you on again sometime so we can talk a little deeper.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I love it.
And we thank you for joining us here on The Shift. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. We do appreciate it. I'm Sonia Zad. We'll see you next time.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at the Vineyard at Florence. Inspired from a trip to Tuscany, the Vineyard at Florence was born, establishing a beautiful destination of authentic Italian pastoral culture, creating fine wines within a unique resort in the world-renowned Texas Hill Country. Nestled in 600 scenic acres, just a short drive north of Austin, the Vineyard at Florence is ideally placed to experience your wanderlust. For more than a decade, they've toasted happily ever afters, created spaces for businesses to collaborate, and celebrated life's milestones. Their catering and events team can't wait to plan your next social or corporate event. And don't forget about our friends at Glam House Collective. Let's get glam.